A woman named Jess is getting ready to give birth. More than anything, she wants her best friend Milly by her side. Jess recalls how she first met Milly in September 1986 when her family moved from Oregon to London. Jess didn't know anyone at the new school and felt awkward because of her American accent. Since then, the girls have been inseparable. Milly taught Jess to speak without an accent. They spent all their time together. Many years passed, and in November 2002, Milly became pregnant. The father of the child was a careless guy named Kit. Despite this, Jess was happy for her friend. In May 2003, the couple got married, and Kit, the manager of a rock band, became a responsible family man. Thus, their family life began. In November 2005, the couple was expecting their second child. Milly had already planned everything. In April 2006, Jess also fell in love. In June 2008, Milly and her family moved into a new house. It seemed like the couple's life was perfect. Milly was a wonderful mother, while Jess and her boyfriend Yago struggled to have a child. Years went by. The girls remained best friends and were captured together in all the photos. But recently everything changed. Milly, who had undergone tests the day before, went to the doctor's appointment. He regretfully informed that her tumor was malignant. Additional tests and intensive chemotherapy were required. Milly's world was shattered. At home during dinner, she barely touched her food and struggled to contain her emotions. Meanwhile, Jess and Yago were still trying to have a child. They weren't married, but they loved each other. Milly is trying to gather herself. She must be strong for the sake of her children. The husband has no idea that his wife is seriously ill. The couple is getting ready for a party. Milly is doing PR and needs to make a good impression. At the party, Milly acted as if nothing had happened. Jess and Yago were also here. They still don't know that they might lose their friend soon. Several more days passed, and Milly still hadn't told her loved ones about her illness. Kit congratulated her on Valentine's Day. Milly just couldn't bring herself to tell him the dreadful truth at that moment. Jess was almost desperate in her infertility treatment. Yago is planning a business trip to earn more money. That way they can pay for the IVF treatment. Jess doesn't want to let her beloved go but promised to think about it. Despite her diagnosis, Milly continues to go to work. At some point, unable to hold back, she called her friend, who knew from her voice that something was wrong. During the meeting, Milly told the best friend about her diagnosis. The situation was very serious. Milly is awaiting a course of chemotherapy and possibly surgery. Jess can't believe it and reproaches Milly for never taking her health seriously. It's not what Milly wanted to hear at that moment. Kit intervened in their conversation. Milly finally told him the truth. After her husband found out, Milly felt relieved. But the thought of her children being left without a mother made her cry. Only when Milly fell asleep, Kit let his emotions out. The next day, the couple gently informed their children about Milly's diagnosis. Jess and Kit were by Milly's side as she prepared for chemotherapy. When Kit went to work, Jess stayed at the hospital to support her friend. Milly doesn't want to lose her hair, but the nurse told her it's inevitable. Milly suffered from the side effects of treatment because the medication was very strong. Nevertheless, she continued to go to work. One of the colleagues noticed that Milly's hair was falling out. Milly continues to attend chemotherapy sessions. Jess is always there with her. Realizing that her hair couldn't be saved, the women went to a salon. The hairdresser picked out a wig for Milly that was very similar to her natural color. It was psychologically challenging for Milly to shave her own hair, but now there was nothing left to lose. Milly has to be strong to keep herself and her loved ones from falling into despair. Miranda, Milly's mother, was also here. Seeing her daughter without hair, she could barely hold back tears. It seemed unfair. Handling everyday tasks and raising the children has become very challenging for Milly now. Kit sees that his wife is no longer coping, but she tries to deny it. Milly called Jess and said she needed help with household chores. Kit works a lot, as does the mother, so they can't take on all the responsibilities. Jess wants to move in with her friend for a while to help her with household chores. Of course, Yago didn't like that idea. Because of Milly's illness, they had already postponed IVF. Yago doesn't want to wait any longer. This has caused conflicts between Jess and her boyfriend. Nevertheless, they are trying to find compromises. Milly continues to attend treatment sessions. Jess distracts her with reading and jokes. At home, Milly suddenly felt unwell during lunch. No pills helped. When Jess is not around, Milly goes to the hospital with her mother. Today was the last session of her treatment. In honor of this event, the spouses organized a small home party. The children cooked toasts for their mother, but Milly couldn't eat anything. Meanwhile, the men discussed their personal lives. Yago complained that all the passion has disappeared from his relationship with Jess. It all comes down to them needing to have a child. Kit is not even thinking about such things right now. His wife is sick, so he's doing everything he can to make her feel complete. While Jess and Iago continue to make attempts, Milly has actually felt better and has returned to work. The colleagues are now aware of her illness and are ready to help in any way they can. Jess and Iago went to a family planning center for the IVF procedure. It seems that Milly has been able to return to her previous life. Often she and Kit would walk around the city, just like they did in their youth. Soon Milly went to see the doctor. The good news was that the treatment had helped. But if she doesn't undergo a mastectomy, the remission won't last long. Milly is adamant that she doesn't want to do this. However, the doctor continues to insist that it's the only way to permanently get rid of the disease. Meanwhile, Jess learned about her pregnancy. She was so happy that she didn't notice Milly's calls. In the evening, the couple celebrated this event. After so many failed attempts, they finally succeeded. Suddenly Jess received a call from anxious Kit, who said that Milly still hadn't come home. Realizing that Jess was about to search for her friend, Iago expressed his dissatisfaction. Milly always intervenes in their lives at the most inconvenient times. Of course Jess couldn't abandon her friend in a difficult moment. She had suspicions about where Milly might be. As Jess suspected, Milly was at a bar, drinking with some guys. Jess immediately drove them away. Upon learning that Milly would soon undergo a challenging surgical operation, Jess didn't know what to say. While Milly went to the bar counter, Jess called Kit and told him that everything was okay. Jess brought her friend home. Milly, in a drunken state, talked about how appearance had always meant a lot to her. That's why she couldn't come to terms with the upcoming surgery. Soon Kit took his wife to the hospital. This was a very difficult period for both of them. Meanwhile, Jess took care of their children. Miranda has arrived. She bought her daughter everything she needed for post-operative rehabilitation. Milly woke up from anesthesia. It was unbearable for her to look at herself. Kit visited his wife at the first opportunity and held her hand. But right now, Milly would prefer not to see anyone. After some time, Milly was discharged from the hospital. She fell into a deep depression. Jess stayed at their home to help. Kit wouldn't have been able to manage alone. For the sake of her friend, Jess tried to stay strong, even though it was very hard for her to watch. Despite everything, Milly strives to maintain her appearance. Jess helps her with this. She only left late at night. Kit took care of his wife on his own and tried not to show how broken he was. Milly is doing her best to get back to normal, but every movement is very difficult for her. Jess still hadn't told her friend about the pregnancy. Iago thinks it's wrong. In his opinion, Milly has the right to know. The relationship between Milly and Kit becomes complicated. Kit can no longer see his wife as a woman. Milly understands that it's not his fault. There are things that can't be changed. One day while waiting in line at a cafe, the guy from the bar recognized Milly. She openly talked about her mastectomy. Surprisingly, it didn't bother Ace, and he invited her for a drink. Milly agreed. For the first time in a long time, she felt genuinely good. A passion arose between her and Ace. This made Milly realize that life is not over. There are still men who find her interesting. Iago is once again preparing for a long business trip. Jess doesn't want to let him go, but they need the money to buy a house, a car, and everything necessary for the baby. Milly tries not to get discouraged. One day the colleagues threw a birthday party for Milly. She wasn't thrilled about it. It turned out that Kit had organized this party. Jess said he meant well. However, Milly wasn't willing to put up with it and expressed everything she thought. Milly doesn't want anyone to pity her or scrutinize her wig. Kit tried to calm his wife, but she didn't want to listen and left. Kit followed her, trying to persuade her to return to the guests. Jess became a witness to the conflict between the spouses. Kit accused his wife of ingratitude, but she didn't care. Milly got into a taxi. Jess followed her. Kit, unable to contain his emotions, shared with Iago that he can't take it anymore. He's trying his best, but it's evidently not enough. Meanwhile, Milly continues to drink in the taxi. She plans to party all night. Iago is very worried about Jess and their child. But Jess told him over the phone that she can't return right now. If she stops Milly alone, it could end very badly. The women asked the driver to take them to some special place. Milly had long wanted to go there with her friend and enjoy these moments of freedom. Jess does everything to make Milly not feel alone. This is true friendship. Instead of going home, the women rented a room at a hotel. Jess realized that this was the most appropriate moment to tell the friend about her pregnancy, but Milly fell asleep. In the end, Jess quietly left. Upon waking up and not finding her friend nearby, Milly called Ace and invited him over. With him, she felt light and good. Jess, who had spent the night in a different room, saw that some guy had come to Milly. Catching them, Jess hurried to leave. Milly followed the friend to explain herself. Milly said that her husband couldn't look at her, so she found someone who accepts her for who she is. Jess believes that this doesn't justify Milly's actions. She's using her illness as an excuse and acting selfishly, expecting everyone around her to indulge her whims. Milly can't believe that the friend isn't on her side at a time when she's feeling so bad. Unable to bear it, Jess confessed her pregnancy. Milly was hurt that Jess hadn't told her earlier. In the end, the friends had a falling out. Jess had no intention of helping Milly get home. Jess left alone. At some point she fell, feeling pain in her abdomen. The journey back home was 250 miles. While Jess waited at the bus stop, Ace offered to give Milly a ride. The friends returned home separately. Yago was going crazy with worry, while Kit would prefer not to see his wife, who doesn't appreciate him. After visiting the doctor, Yago and Jess learned that there were complications with the pregnancy. Christmas arrived, but the friends didn't even wish each other well. Jess felt sad about her beloved going on another business trip. She promised not to get involved in any of her friends' dramas again. Milly deleted Jess's number from her phone. It seems like their friendship had come to an end. Miranda came to visit Jess at work to check on how she was doing. Jess didn't hide that there were some problems. Miranda is genuinely sorry to hear this. She doesn't know what to do. At the next doctor's appointment, it was revealed that the MRI results confirmed their worst fears. The disease had returned. Upon hearing this, Milly burst into tears. It seems all the fighting had been in vain. At home, Milly told her husband and mother everything as it was. Everyone tries to cope with what has happened in their own way. Milly's condition deteriorates rapidly. She has lost interest in life. One day Jess bumped into Milly in town and didn't recognize her at first. Milly apologized for everything she had done. She doesn't want the best friend to remember her in a bad light. The women went to a cafe for a snack. Milly revealed that her illness had come back. The doctors did everything they could, but her body was giving up. Jess thinks that her problems are nothing compared to Milly's. Nevertheless, Jess said that she had fallen the day they had a fight and it had a bad effect on her pregnancy. Milly feels guilty. She regrets how everything turned out. Back home, Jess video called Yago and told him about Milly's illness. However, the connection was cut almost immediately. Milly decided to confess her infidelity to the husband to relieve her conscience. She acknowledges her mistake. Milly was only seeking solace, unwilling to accept reality. The spouses forgave each other for everything. Milly also finally reconciled with Jess. Milly admitted to her friend that she had been to a hospice today. She doesn't want the family to witness her passing away. Now Milly spends all her time with the husband and children. She tried gently telling her daughter that she would not be around soon because the treatment is no longer effective. The little girl burst into tears. The parents tried to console her. They didn't want to hide the truth, so their son and daughter had time to come to terms with it. After a while, Milly packed her things, preparing to go to the hospice. Jess visited her. Kit had been there the whole time, as had Miranda. When Jess arrived, Miranda left them alone, giving them the opportunity to talk. Milly had a small gift for her friend, beautiful shoes. Jess struggled not to cry. Milly wants to wait until Jess gives birth. Only then will she be able to pass away peacefully. Back at home, Jess felt contractions and immediately called Yago, but she went to voicemail. Yago still hadn't returned from his business trip. So Jess called Milly. Despite her weakness, she answered. Jess asked the friend for help. Milly intended to go there. Of course the husband was against it, but Milly kept repeating that she had to be there. In the end, Miranda agreed with her daughter. There's no point in spending the last days in inaction. Pretending to be a doctor, Miranda took her daughter out of the hospice and hailed a taxi. Meanwhile, Jess, who was in the ward, begged the midwife to call Milly. Learning that Jess was giving birth, Yago tried to call her but couldn't get through. It wasn't until Milly was wheeled into the hospital room that Jess stopped worrying. She held the friend's hand, feeling her support. Finally, Yago managed to reach them. He really wanted to be near his beloved but couldn't. Yago and his colleagues encouraged Jess, who was cursing everyone. Finally, Jess gave birth to a son. At that moment, the connection was lost. The friends cried with happiness. Yago returned home at the earliest opportunity. Now they were a real family. In her free time, Jess sat by Milly's bedside, reminiscing about the happiest moments of her life. But now, all of that was in the past. Jess held her friend's hand. She would be with her to the end. Despite everything, they remained the dearest people to each other. Soon Milly passed away. Jess was by her side at that moment. When Kit entered, he realized from the look on Jess's face that his wife was gone. Outside, Jess burst into tears. Now she would have to learn to live without Milly, as would everyone who loved her. Time passed, and life went on. Jess and Yago were expecting their second child. Kit was raising the children, and all their loved ones supported him. Miranda, by the way, had married a good man.